Okay, I'm going to show you how to make a clasp using just beads if you don't have any like wire or metal clasps. So what you need to do this is you need your beading thread. You need like one slightly large bead, and then you need like seed beads of your choosing. And the idea is we're going to be creating a loop on one side that a large bead can fit through tightly. So I think the best way for us to do this, I think what we should do is we should start with some seed beads. So I'm going to pour them out on my beading mat. And I'm just going to go ahead and bead for a little bit. Alright, what you'll want to do is you'll want to kind of test and see how large of a loop you'll need for a bead to fit through, for a large bead to fit through. This to me is still looking a little too small, so I'm going to add some more. And then we can test it again. So if this is my loop, I want this bead to fit tightly enough through that it's not gonna like slip out all the time and make my bracelet come undone. I think this is gonna work. I think maybe just one more bead. Alright, and then this is the kind of tricky part. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take our tail thread right here, and we're going to want to put a bead so that it goes over both the tail and the long length of thread. So I'm going to thread my bead, and then I'm going to pull it down. Once it gets to this tail, I'm going to make sure the tail goes through the bead as well. And that is what's going to keep this loop together. You see how now it's closed together? I'm going to do a few more of those. Maybe I'll just do like 3 beads total. Alright, so here's my loop. I have 3 little beads that goes over the tail and the long length of thread. I think what I'll do next, I think I'll put my crimp bead on just to make it really secure. You should have a few small metal beads in your jewelry kit. These are called crimp beads. And they kind of are like a, I don't know, they're like a little stopper bead. You can use your pliers to squish them so that way all your beads are gonna stay put. It's kind of like what you would do instead of tying a knot. Oh, this is really tricky. Alright, let me zoom you in. So I'm actually going to get it like as tight as I can and make sure that there's no loose slack over here. I want everything really tight. Then once there's no wiggle room, I'm going to clamp down on the crimp bead and just press down, and that's going to flatten it. So now this is permanent, it's going to stay there. Alright, then from there you can just go ahead and you can bead the rest of your bracelet as you normally would, and I'll show you at the end how to do this last part. One thing to note is that you're not going to cut the tail off. You want all your beads to actually cover up that tail. So you never are cutting the tail of your thread, you're just threading the bead so it goes over the tail. Okay, so now that I have the majority of the length of my bracelet, now I have to start thinking about how I'm going to connect this. I think what I'll do, I think I'm going to take my remaining crimp bead Alright, I'm going to take my crimp bead and slide it on because now I have the full length of beads that I want. I'm going to put 3 more of my seed beads. And then I'm going to put my large bead. And then I'm going to put 1 more seed bead on top of it. And let me make sure that this seems like it's the right length for me. I think I need to make it just 1 more bead longer. Let me add 1 more. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I have this 1 bead here on the end. Let me zoom in for you. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go outside of this seed bead and go back through the clear bead. So I'm letting this seed bead sit here, and I'm taking my tail and I'm going back down through the seed bead toward the length of the bracelet. So here's my little tail thread. It's getting pulled through, pulling this through. See how this creates like a little stopper here? We want to make sure that there's no gap. Right now, let's see, I'll show you on the black. Maybe you'll be able to tell a little bit easier. Alright, do you see how there's a little bit of a gap here? We don't want that to happen, so make sure that you're adjusting the placement of your large bead so that it's pretty tight. Now there's no more gap. Now the really tricky part is we have to take our tail and go back through at least, I would say, at least 6 of these beads. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of bend the beads over. That way I can access the hole in the center of the beads, and then I'm just going to loop my little tail through. You can see it's starting to go through some of these beads. We want to make sure that it at least goes through the crimp bead and a few beads after that. I would say this is the hardest part, so if you get a little frustrated, just take a break and try again, because this is the most important part. So I'm pulling my tail through these beads. I still need to make it through the crimp bead and maybe a few beads past that. So I just kind of fold them over. Alright, here I am, right at the crimp bead. Oh, it's really small, so it's gonna be hard, but that's okay. Okay, so now my tail is safely tucked inside of several beads. However, I've developed this awkward gap where the thread is showing, so I'm gonna pull on the tail, pull, pull, pull. You see how the gap disappeared? Now I can use my pliers, oops, I can use my pliers and find the crimp bead, and I can make sure the tail is tight and then crush it. Ta-da! Alright, so now that this tail is tucked into some of the beads, I can go ahead and trim it. I'm picky, so I'm going to just put it through a few more beads and then trim it, just because I like to be extra safe. Okay, take this tail, and now this is how your bracelet works. It can go through this little loop. Hopefully, oh my goodness, hopefully. Ta-da! That felt a little bit scary. Like this.